Hello friends, today we'll be talking about the characteristics of the Neoclassical age. But before talking about the characteristics, I think it would be better to talk about Neoclassical age in brief. The Neoclassical age dates back from 1660 to 1798, right before the publication of the lyrical ballads jointly by William Wordsworth and Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This period is broken down into three parts: the Restoration period, the Augustan period, and the Age of Johnson, or the Age of Reason and Good Sense. Writers of the Neoclassical period tried to imitate the style of the Romans and the Greeks, and hence got its name Neoclassical or the New Classical. Friends, the Augustan age, why has it been named so? It has been called so because generally regarded as a golden age, like the period of Roman history, that of Emperor Augustus in ancient Rome, this period was of political stability, splendor, and tranquility. They wanted this period to last much longer and attacked everything which threatened to oppose this period. They thought that ancient art was much superior to the modern art and often imitated the Roman classical authors: Virgil, Ovid, Titius, Livius, and Horace. The Augustans believed that their duty was not to try to be original, but to re-express universal truths about mankind. This age is also called the Transition or the Pre-Romantic age. The 18th century is known as the Age of Enlightenment or the Age of Reason to stress the national trend of the period and the attitude according to which reason and judgment should be the guiding principles for human activities. It saw the birth of a new literary movement called the Neoclassicism or the Rationalism. This movement was greatly influenced by the ideas of John Locke and Isaac Newton. The importance of Newton is clearly seen in the epitaph written by Alexander Pope. In quotes, "Nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, 'Let Newton be,' and all was light." Unquote. The universe was governed by the mechanical principles and the rules of the civilized life. As far as the literature is concerned, the importance of reason influenced the literature of the time, and the English literary standards were reformed. Science was based on reason. The writers modeled much of their works on the classical writers and referred to the ancient Greece and Rome, using subjects from the classical mythology and history. In quotes, "In good art, inspiration must be controlled by judgment. In quote. Now the rise of the middle of the 17th century, it saw a great change, and this change was in the English poetic temperament. There was complete confusion in the literary values and standards. In the wake of the metaphysical wave and its fading away, Ben Jonson had already apprised of the danger and also shown the way to move about, but in a prophetic manner. Jonson lived upon the form of the classical writers rather than the content, because this content was inspiring to the Elizabethans and not to Jonson. Jonson used a literary order and discipline, but unfortunately, this literary order and discipline was overlooked for a while. His concern for literary order and discipline came into effect only after the waning of the metaphysical school. The return to the balance and the equipoise and restraint, this gained an impetus or inspiration through the powerful influence of the French literary taste. Themselves derived from the classical literature on the English court as a result of Charles II's long stay in compliance after the execution of his father, Charles I. Since this age had the spirit of enlightenment, it used the classical subjects as content and focused on man as a person in society. The artist would express his knowledge of the world in rational and objective way. His writing was not to be influenced by his emotions or prejudices. For objectivity, the writers had to write very clearly and use a very precise and a correct language. For that purpose, poetic diction was adopted. Now, as far as the style is concerned, wit was used, that is, the attractiveness, the clever invention, and humor. And as regards poetry, the heroic couplet was used for satire and mock heroic poems, like Rape of the Lock, we all know, which has been written by Alexander Pope. Was the greatest writer ever to use this form of more heroic couplet, worked in this period and cultivated this style to show an easy grace, a naturalness of expression, and a pithiness of content. This was all in brief about what Neoclassicism meant. Now, talking about the characteristics of Neoclassicism, we find that there are a number of factors that are different from the standard and values which were followed and observed by the previous age. Now, when these factors are discussed, among these factors, the factor which finds its place on the first and foremost place is the respect for rules, which was scrupulously followed by the men of letters. We find the spirit of liberty in the literary transition from the Renaissance to the Restoration period. The spirit of liberty is at once, in quotes, fanciful brilliant, and adventurous, towards a rule and a discipline, both in inspiration and in form, unquote, as has been opined by Ligby and Kazamia in their History of English Literature. Now, in the second place, we see that the classical traditions and the conventions were followed in every kind of poetry, whether it was drama, epic, satire, ode, or pastoral. If one did not follow law, that is, the non-compliance of law, then their form did not make a good art. The noblest ideal was a perfect form, and the content or the substance was secondary in importance. That is, more importance was given to the form or style rather than the content. This way, what we see is that the contrast between the warmth and passion of the Elizabethan times and the cool control of the neoclassical period. This contrast is really very extreme. In the third place, when we view the characteristics, what we find that this age was an age of decorum. And as a lot of emphasis was laid on looking right and also acting right. Great value was placed on the manners, on virtues like self-control and self-governance, and above all, on balance. One was not allowed to be outrageous or to rebel or act out. What one had to exercise or exhibit was to show control. That was what was required in the society during that period. Talking about the another characteristics, we could term this age as a first great age of scientific instrumentation, where attempts were made to use science in order to explain and glorify the wonders of the divine creation. There were accurate clocks, the reckoning of longitude, the refinement of the microscope and telescope. They were all put to work to explain the marvels of the universe. Thus, this new science was seen as to explain to men the working of God, or how God worked, basically. We discussed about 4 qualities today, 4 characteristics of the neoclassical age. In the next place, there are a few more characteristics which we would be discussing in the next lecture. Thank you.